Okay, welcome to the IELTS Speaking Course 7.5. Again, that's for people that want to get over a 6 to a 6.5, beyond, and perhaps to a 7.5. So we're talking higher level English, basically getting above a 6, 6.5 and beyond. Right, so this is Lesson 7, Introduction to Parts 2 and 3 lessons. This is a quick introduction of how I'm going to go about the Part 2 and 3 lessons before we actually go into them. So, intro, reminder about the course. So what I want to get you to do is understand how to get to a 7 and over, ideally. Know what to focus on. Train you to train yourself to do this. It takes training, not just somebody telling you what to do. It takes you practicing and making an effort, and practicing a lot. Keep practicing certain structures and certain patterns. Master certain things native speakers do when they talk, and master tricks to help your pronunciation score increase, and therefore your fluency score will probably increase as well. Grasp how to master fluency by improving these other areas. So that's another point that I keep making. You improve the other key areas, you will then sound more fluent, you will then get a higher fluency score. Right, my rationale as a refresher. You need to speak more like a native to get a 7 or more, but you do not need to speak exactly like a native. You need to use language more flexibly, which means in different contexts, not memorizing whole sentences, but memorizing phrases and knowing and understanding how to use them grammatically correctly and in a way that a native would use them. That's what I mean by in different contexts, flexible use of language. You have to get rid of the basic grammar errors. It's basic errors that are stopping people get beyond a 6 to a 6.5 to a 7 and beyond. Basic grammar errors are a big problem holding people back. And a lot of people that are getting high scores think, oh, the basic grammar's not important. I need to use more complex language. No, you don't. You need to get the basics really correct, like a native. Even someone who is very, very fluent can actually not achieve a 6.5 even in their speaking test because of simple basic errors they just keep making and they don't stop making. So I'm going to go on about this because it's so important. As an examiner for over 10 years, I have to say so many people did not achieve a 7 because of the basic errors. Just keep going on. You have to master some nuances of meaning, some little more subtle examples of meaning and expression of meaning. That's also a way of thinking. It's not just a language thing. It's getting out of a kind of more robotic way of learning a language and thinking in a more natural human discourse manner. You must think for yourself while training yourself and while practicing. If you don't think from yourself, you won't feel and you won't sound natural. If you don't sound natural, you will not get a higher score. It's as simple as that. Thinking for yourself and sounding more yourself, sounding more natural, just makes you sound more fluent. Right. So, key features of the band descriptors between a 6 and a 7. I've gone over this before. I'm going to go over it again briefly because we're about to start part 2 and 3 of the course. But I'll do it a little bit more briefly than before. So, fluency and coherence. Willingness to produce long turns. To show you're willing. That will get you a 6. To produce long turns without noticeable effort will get a 7 or more. Coherence may be lost at times as a result of hesitation, repetition or self-correction. That's a 6. For a 7, some hesitation, repetition or self-correction may occur. However, it will not affect coherence. So, we're talking hesitation which affects coherence, and for a 7, hesitation which doesn't affect coherence. Again, more native hesitation, like I'm making now. I'm hesitating now. But my hesitations are in the places a native speaker talking slowly but confidently would place them. They sound coherent. So, use of range of spoken discourse markers, connectives, though not always used appropriately for a 6. Flexible use of spoken discourse markers. Again, for a 7 or more, we're talking flexibility. It means you know when to use them in a variety of places, like I say, in a way that a native speaker would have more awareness of. This awareness is not so easy to teach. It's a case of you getting in the right state of mind and really listening and absorbing and thinking when native speakers like me today are speaking to you. Right, so lexical resource. 6, sufficient to discuss topics at length. 7, flexibly used to discuss a variety of topics. So what are we talking about again? Flexibility. Flexibility. Using things and adapting their use to multiple situations in a natural way. Vocabulary use may be inappropriate, but meaning is clear. 7, some ability to use less idiomatic items and an awareness of style and collocation, though inappropriacies occur. So for 7, we're talking a few less common items, not less common for a native speaker, less common for a learner, and an awareness of style, an awareness of using language in the right places, though you can make mistakes. Generally able to paraphrase for a 6, and effective use of paraphrase for a 7. Again, all these, flexibility. You've got to absorb the language and feel where it's used more appropriately. And that takes practice, but also it takes careful, active listening. So, grammatical range and accuracy for a 6, complex, short and complex sentence forms, a variety of structures with limited flexibility. Don't have to be that flexible for a 6 for grammar. 7, a range of structures is flexibly used. Error-free sentences are frequent. Again, flexible, flexible, flexible. That's the word that's coming up in the band descriptors that the examiner has for 7, flexibility. So, 6, errors frequently occur in complex structures, but they rarely impede, they rarely affect communication. But for a 7, simple and complex structures are used effectively, despite some errors. A few basic errors persist, a few. So we've got, again, effective use of simple and complex structures. Again, there's a flexibility thing going on here. Pronunciation. A range of phonological features. Control is variable. For a 7, some control of a wider range of features to convey subtle meaning, nuances of meaning, a sense of style again, sense of style and flexibility. Chunking is generally appropriate for a 6. That's, remember, where we're pausing and grouping our meaning phrases, the main phrases, the emphasis we're using, the stress, the pausing, the pace, chunking. Can sustain appropriate rhythm fairly often. So we've got rhythm, chunking, pace, rhythm coming in here as a 7. Again, you can absorb this by listening to how I'm saying the answers as we go through the test, where I'm pausing, where I'm laying the emphasis on my words. So, some effective use of intonation, but not always sustained. And 7 can be fairly effortlessly understood throughout. 6, individual words and phonemes, little sounds in the words, may be mispronounced, but only causes occasional lack of clarity. But for a 7, accent only has occasional effect on intelligibility. So not much difference there for a 7. Again, we're talking a bit more clearly, a knowledge of pace and rhythm, a little bit more, mainly clarity. Not really accent, but clarity and confidence and knowing when we're stressing and knowing when we're pausing. That's the best way to think about pronunciation to get a higher score. Right, so Key features in the band descriptors again. Sorry if I'm telling you this again, but it's best to be aware of it before going into the next part of the course. You don't have to be perfect. You do not have to use highly academic vocabulary. You do not have to use lots of colloquial expressions, just some more natural native speaker expressions. You have to polish your basic grammar errors. You have to. You have to practice taking risks during preparation time. So prepare by really practicing and using the language rather than just using what you're comfortable with. You have to sound a bit more natural than you do now. And you have to learn lexical chunks and use them flexibly. That's why you need to practice using the same word patterns we're learning in many different answers. Manipulate them, practice, check them. That's how we train ourselves to become more natural and flexible, which is what you need for a 7 or more. Right, so part 2 and 3 lessons. I'll try and go through this quickly but concisely. Short introduction to my part 2 and 3 lessons. Do's and don'ts of the test. So first, I'll talk very quickly about some do's and don'ts about part 2 and part 3. Then a little bit of extra advice. Tips from an examiner, let's say. Essential things to always remember. Then I'll talk about my approach. Advanced approaches to training yourself don't mean complicated language. Practicing structures and chunks of language you can use in many, many different answers. And forcing yourself to stop making those persistent basic errors by intensely practicing. Right, part 2, do's and don'ts. So, do's, you speak at a calm, controlled pace. You do not need to rush. Spend your 1-minute preparation time noting down the key steps, not writing sentences, noting down the logical steps. The logic in your mind will help you be more fluent. Try to tell true stories. You are psychologically more likely to remember language, vocabulary, content, grammar, everything if your story is true. If it's a small, boring story, it doesn't matter. If it's true, you will remember it. If you're memorizing an answer which is not yours, which is made up from a book, you actually are less likely to remember it and you're less likely to sound natural. This is the psychological example. It has nothing to do with the examiner. It's psychological. It won't help you improve. So, don'ts. Do not memorize whole topic-based answers. I've just told you why. Don't worry about time too much. Just speak your part 2 answer. The examiner will interrupt you because they must be very strict with the time. It's not your worry. Don't worry if you do not have time to finish your answers. It doesn't matter. You will not lose marks. You just talk and tell your story the way you've planned it, and if there's no time left, that's totally fine. You don't have to cover all the points. As long as you're willing to speak and you're speaking and speaking clearly and speaking as best as possible, it will not affect your score at all. So, part 3 do's and don'ts. Remember, it's about wider social issues. It's not about you. So it is about wider social issues. So do get your mind tuned into ideas and opinions about the world. State your opinions, but give examples from society. So they can be your opinions, but the examples are from wider social issues. Listen to the question carefully. It sounds silly, but sometimes some people are so keen to say what they want to say, they only listen to 2 parts of the question or 2 words. Then they answer it wrongly and they just sound a bit stupid. So listen to the question very carefully. Don'ts. Do not memorize whole topic-based answers again. It will not help you. And it will not help you improve for flexible situations where you get a completely different topic. Don't worry about time too much, again in part 3, and don't worry if you don't have time to finish your answers in part 3. The examiner always is interrupting anyway because they need to keep to the time. You don't lose any marks. So, extra advice for part 3. Get into the right mental attitude. Examiners are looking to get the most from you. They will expect you to expand on your answers. They may ask you more challenging questions if you're good. The better you are, the more challenging questions they may ask you. They're not trying to catch you out. They're trying to get as much language from you as possible so that they can possibly give you a higher score. But you have to demonstrate that language use. They're not trying to catch you out, but if you've been churning out memorized robot answers during the whole test, part 3 is where they'll really test you and judge you the most, because they will test what you really can do, not what you're capable of memorizing robotically. So they will test you in part 3, but they're not trying to catch you out. They're just trying to test your English, your real English. You need opinions. You need to think. They don't have to be complicated or different, but they need to be logical and well said. They need to be logical, sensible opinions. This will, again, help you build your arguments in a natural-sounding way and get higher scores on all bands. Right, so my approach is we do a part 2 lesson based upon a topic and a question type, followed by a part 3 lesson with follow-on topics and question types, and then we do another part 2 lesson with another topic and related question types. Following that, we have the follow-on topics from part 3 and their related question types, etc. So what I'm trying to say here is we do a part 2 and then we do a part 3 based on it, based on the general topic area, but with great flexibility. Then we do a part 2, then we do a part 3, then we do a part 2, then we do a part 3, like the test. That's the layout and the structure of this next section of lessons. So we study a generic question type, topic type, but the lexis, structures, patterns we learn can be flexibly used in many, many parts of the test. Again, you've got to take my advice, you've got to train yourself, do all the tasks and exercises, pause the video where you need to, push yourself to practice, because the language I'm teaching you can be very flexibly used all across the test. Right, so layout of part 2. So my part 2 lessons are, there's topic areas. We train ourselves with common general topics, the kind of questions that fit in commonly in the generic general topic. Lexis, structures, language that can be used flexibly. I've carefully chosen this for its flexible application in the test. Learning chunks of language, as I say, understanding them, using them flexibly, not learning individual words and not learning whole memorized sentences. Chunks of language, collocations, groups of words that come together that we can flexibly fit into many different answers. The breakdown. So types of part 2 topics and techniques will cover key language, structures, patterns, advanced usage, getting the basics right, I keep saying this, correcting basic errors, pronunciation, mainly pace and rhythm. That's where the pauses and the stress are. Training to use lexical chunks and collocations for a high score, and developing confidence through the practice of getting in the right mind. Sometimes it's a bit of a state of mind. Get yourself in the right mind. Get yourself in the right frame of mind. You're not trying to memorize massive, massive chunks of language. You're trying to develop your own thoughts and your own flexible use of English. You get this into your head, you'll start to get into the groove like a surfer, surfing the waves. You'll hit the waves naturally and you'll feel at one with the language. You'll feel there, you'll get in the right state of mind, and you will end up feeling more fluent and being more accurate and being more confident. The layout of part 3 is basically there's 2 types of questions and their answer techniques. So questions relating to importance and priority, questions relating to agreeing and disagreeing, questions relating to giving opinions, questions relating to advantages and disadvantages, questions relating to identifying problems, proposing solutions, talking about differences and similarities, evaluating 2 opinions. All of these things we will do in the part 3 lessons, but in each lesson we'll practice 2 of these particular answer techniques or question types and answer patterns. Example, part 3, type of part 3 topics and techniques. In this lesson, we will cover the topics of health and fitness and medical care and responsibility, and the discussion techniques of giving and supporting opinions and evaluating 2 different opinions. So this is an example of an introduction slide of what we're going to do in one of the part 3 lessons. Okay, so you get the idea. 2 different general close generic topic types bounced off part 2, and 2 different discussion techniques responding to types of questions the examiner will pose to you. Right, so the breakdown of part 3 is born from part 2 again. Key language, structures, patterns, advanced usage, getting the basics right, pronunciation, pace and rhythm, training to use lexical chunks and collocations, and developing confidence through getting in the right mind. So, same idea, same breakdown, different context. So, you have to study to succeed. I keep repeating it, it's a fact. You have to practice, and the right practice is essential. Watch the video. Watch these videos. Pause it and make notes with pen and paper. Use a DRD recorder to record yourself. Double check your notes. Double check your recordings. Write practice answers. Yes, write them down. Record them. Listen to them. Correct them. This process is very, very important, and push yourself to do many examples of this, even if you're getting bored. The language, I'm telling you, there's a lot of language in these lessons, but it won't go into your head and stay there and get used like a native without training. So we need to train the brain. Okay, so get prepared, get ready. Get a book and a pen that you use only for my lessons. Get a DRD recorder and use it only for IELTS preparation. Make a point of not forgetting to stop and start the video when you want, noting things down. Do this all the time. After every slide or 2 slides, make notes. Do the tasks I suggest in the lessons. Even if you think, oh, that's easy, I can do that. No, do it. Get it right. Get it natural. Always check your work and practice variations on the answers. Not just one answer, that's good, that's fine. Vary them. Variations on the same answers. This develops flexibility. Listen to my pronunciation, my chunking, where I pause, my pausing, my rhythm. Try to imitate this, or at least get an awareness of why I'm speaking in this way. Think of it as an exercise. Now, get comfortable, make sure you have good headphones, make sure you have a fast, decent computer, and we'll go into my part 2 and 3 speaking lessons. Thank you.